Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Game Plan. This episode is all about the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Cleveland Browns. And I got to say, the optics of this game, you would look at it and you would see two teams on two different paths. But when you dive into the data, it is a lot closer than you think. It'll be very, very interesting matchup. If you're new to the show, here's what I do. I quickly run through the injuries. I run through the key yardage stats. I run through the key gambler stats. I'll explain those if you're new. Then we'll run through a path to victory for both the Browns and the Steelers, and we'll end it with my fantasy football and daily fantasy football projections from my fantasy football algorithm that I share with everybody. Before we get rolling here, as I always say, please, 2 seconds of your time for 2 clicks. We put a lot of work into these videos, but believe it or not, there are still some production features that are locked for us. We can't unlock them until our channel grows and gets bigger. We need your support to do that, so please a like and a subscribe. But let's dig in first, as I always do, by showing the injuries. And I got to say, since I've been doing these videos, it's been a few weeks now, this is the cleanest injury report that I've seen. I'm not accounting for, obviously, the people on IR that went through earlier in the year, but you can see Seals, Jones, and Vernon on the Browns. Then the Steelers, you have Switzer and Hayden. I gotta say, for these guys, it's I guess Vernon is the only one, or I should say Switzer and Vernon are the only ones that are out. I would say that would favor Pittsburgh, but again, these are pretty clear. I mean, these are two healthy teams playing on Thursday night, as healthy as any team can be at this point in the season, so very interesting. Now, the next thing I want to do is look for the key yardage stats. These are passing and running yards accumulated throughout the year, and I like to compare offense versus defense and vice versa. So we can see the Browns passing offense is 19th versus the Steelers 12th ranked passing defense, whereas the Steelers 27th ranked passing offense versus the 7th ranked passing defense for the Browns. Then you look at the run game. The Browns are 13th. The Steelers are 27th respectively in offenses. But you look at these are pretty even. I guess if I was going to give a slight edge to somebody, it would narrowly be Pittsburgh, and here's why I tell you. Here's why. I think that the Steelers' run offense being 27th, I think that's an artificial number. I said this a couple of weeks ago. With respect to the San Francisco 49ers when they were playing the Arizona Cardinals on Thursday Night Football, I said, San Francisco has a low passing offense at that point because I don't think that San Francisco has had to pass yet. I don't think that schematically they've tried to pass. I don't think that makes them a poor passing team. I just think that is their preference. I think that's similar in Pittsburgh. I don't think that schematically their offensive play caller, Fichtner there, wants to run the ball. If anything, I would argue that he's been run-averse throughout the season. I was expecting when Roethlisberger went down for them just to kind of, tighten up the line of scrimmage and just let James Conner and Jaylen Samuels and whoever kind of run over, but they haven't. They've still been going 5 wide. They have not strayed from their philosophy, and I guess credit the Steelers. They built a program there. I think that it was a little bit of a rockier start to Mason Rudolph, and then of course he got injured and Hodges came in. But I guess the point I'm trying to make here is if Pittsburgh commits to the run, I still believe that they can run. So I look at the pass offense versus the pass defense for the Browns. They're kind of even. The pass defense for the Browns is better than the pass offense for the Steelers. I give you that. Then again, the run offense versus the run defense for the Steelers, about even. Run defense, run offense, they're even, but I give a slight edge to the Steelers. But given where we're at with that, passing defense and passing offense, I think you can say that the Steelers really have to probably run the ball this game, and the Browns are probably going to be able to clamp down on the passing game for the most part. Now let's look at the gambler statistics and what these are for new people here. If you're new to the show, if you're looking at, I guess, the sharp money, right? The people that make their careers betting in Vegas or wherever, they look at a few key stats first and foremost. Now there's a lot of different methodologies. There's a lot of data that goes into these picks. But first and foremost, this is what I do when I make my picks. This is what the professional gamblers do when they make their picks. They look at yards per play, right? How efficient are you with every play? They look at third down and fourth down percentage. Basically, once you can drive the ball, how good are you at staying on the field in key situations? And then red zone percentage and, your ability to push the ball into the end zone, not just field goals, but your red zone touchdown percentage. and your turnover margin. So let's just run through here. You can see that the Steelers and the Browns, in terms of net within their team, the Browns gain 5.7 yards per play. That's pretty decent, but they give up 5.7 yards per play. Not so good. That would be a net of 0, right? 5.7 minus 5.7 is 0. Same on the Steelers side. They don't gain as much as the Browns do, but they also don't give up as much as the Browns do. Dead even there. It's the first time this season I've seen a dead even yards per play margin. Then you look at the third down and fourth down percentages. Where the offense is good, the defense is good. Where the offense is bad, the defense is bad. It's pretty much even across the board here. And when I was looking at these numbers with the Steelers going on the run that they've had, I was expecting the Steelers' numbers to be a little bit better. But again, you can't forget that Cleveland, and we didn't forget this before the season when we were making our futures bets, Cleveland had a brutal opening stretch to the season. It was actually even worse than we thought it would be. Even that Buffalo game that they won, I think before the season, everybody's probably checking that off as a win. But that was not an easy win for the Browns, so good for them last week. Red zone percentage, again, if I'm going to give an edge maybe on percentage points, you give the slightest of edges to, what the hell do you do here? It's like 1 or 2%. So there's not really a big differential in these gambler stats here. It really is you're talking about injuries, you're talking about yardage, you're talking about gambler stats. At this point, we're pretty damn even. Again, as even as I've seen any game so far this year, where we start to see a little bit of a slip. The Browns are not taking care of the ball as well as they could be. That is a negative 0.9, almost 1 possession a game they're giving up. And the Steelers are at plus 1.4 turnover margin per game. So if you average these two out, or basically you take an accumulation, that's 2.5 possessions on average that the Steelers would get when playing the Browns. So that is going to be a key theme. So what are the paths to success? And I got to say, once again, this is an even game. My computer projections project this to be super even in score. I think the projected score was 19-18, Cleveland over Pittsburgh. I don't know if I agree with that, but I will say Pittsburgh getting 3 points. Pittsburgh is a 3-point underdog in this game. I probably take the points in this game because it is so evenly matched. But how do I see the Browns attacking the Pittsburgh Steelers? First of all, I just said on the last page, and this isn't rocket science, everybody, they have to limit the turnovers. The Steelers are going to rush the quarterback. Now, what I think Cleveland has going for them is, unlike the LA Rams last week, when Pittsburgh basically just made Jared Goff feel uncomfortable, Baker Mayfield plays with that chip on his shoulder. It rubs some people the wrong way. I think it's kind of funny. I kind of like it, as long as they're doing their thing and they're winning. I don't like him puffing his chest out like if they lose. But to his credit, I don't really think he does when they lose. But Baker Mayfield isn't going to be intimidated by a pass rush. What he might do is rush some throws. So Pittsburgh's still going to do their thing, but Cleveland, just got to take care of the ball, hold on to the ball. Of course, in the running game, Chubb and Kareem Hunt there. Now, speaking of Hunt, use him out of the backfield a little bit more. I think they need to get rid of the ball quickly, right? How do you limit turnovers? How do you limit errant passes? You get rid of the ball early, and then you obviously the run game. So that they're going to have to try to commit to Chubb. I think Pittsburgh will do a pretty decent job of defending him. I think this is about Baker Mayfield getting rid of the ball out of his hands early. I think it's working the flats to Kareem Hunt or Nick Chubb. I think it's hitting your tight ends, which I mark down earlier, whether it's Harris, whether it's Seals-Jones. Win that matchup at tight end, work that short to intermediate area of the field, and then you can open things up to hit Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham a little bit deeper. And then defensively, don't let Mason Rudolph beat you with the same basically game plan, right? Pittsburgh's recipe for success, I won't say this from last week, but a couple weeks before when they started their winning streak, they were handing the ball off to Connor and Jaylen Samuels and basically Edmonds and whoever else was healthy at that point at running back. And they were hitting these guys out of the backfield. They were sending them out on routes and basically keeping the passing game short. That's what Pittsburgh wants to do. I think Cleveland matches up well for that. It's going to be hard to bottle up all of them, but if you're gonna basically have Mason Rudolph beat you, don't let him beat you with 2 or 3 yard passes. Make him beat you a little bit down the field. Test him and see if you can't pick a pass or two off up from him. Now, Pittsburgh, how do I see them attacking Cleveland? First and foremost, I think Pittsburgh needs to run the ball. I talked about that at the top of the show. I really feel like Pittsburgh can get some yardage against this Cleveland defense. We'll see how it goes. They have not really shown a willingness to really try to exploit running matchups throughout the season when I've been doing these, and even since before I've been posting these videos. But I do think that if they commit to the run, if they try to get Connor, assuming he's healthy enough to get 20 carries, get him 20 carries. And I know that's a big workload. So maybe you give him 15 and you give Jaylen Samuels 10 to 15 of his own, and then of course try to hit these guys out of the backfield. Depending on coverage assignments, I don't think Juju Smith-Schuster has a great game this game. I said the same thing last week, but I do think either Diontae Johnson or James Washington has an opportunity, again, depending on who Cleveland rolls coverage to either one of those guys. My money is on James Washington to have a really nice game, but I think one of those two guys could get in the end zone possibly even twice this game, maybe coming out of the slot. So work those around. Also move Juju Smith-Schuster around a little bit, see if you can isolate a potential mismatch there. But again, I think James Washington in fantasy, and we'll see that as we get into our fantasy football projections, is the better play there, at least in daily fantasy terms. Not to say I would start James Washington over Juju Smith-Schuster, but in daily fantasy, I like his value a little bit more this week. Steelers might have a tough time getting running backs involved in the passing game. I will say Cleveland matches up well. They've limited the screen game. They've limited running backs out of the backfield quite well. Vance McDonald has to be involved, in my opinion, in this game to work some of this stuff. I don't know that Jaylen Samuels or James Conner is going to have that huge game. Cleveland's certainly going to try to limit that, as we talked about on the Cleveland Browns game plan there. But I think Vance McDonald, this Cleveland Browns team has given up big yardage and touchdowns to tight ends. Vance McDonald should be involved in the game plan, and for Pittsburgh's sake, I hope that he is. He's another guy that I have as kind of a daily fantasy or fantasy football sleeper this week. And then just keep the defense rolling. Let that whole group of nasty pass rushers do their thing. Get in Baker's face. I don't think that they intimidate him. I think they intimidated the Rams last week, but I do see that pass rush, and they're a phenomenal defense. I love playing their defense in fantasy football. I can't believe they're only owned in about 2/3 of the leagues. They get to the passer and they force turnovers. They sack and they force turnovers. Those are two huge stats. But keep it rolling, Pittsburgh. Cleveland, we'll see if they can get rid of the ball quickly to neutralize that pass rush, but we'll see how it goes. It's going to be a very, very fun game to watch on Thursday night. Now, here are my fantasy football projections. Now, if you're not familiar, RoccoBot is my daily fantasy football engine and my fantasy football engine that I write, that I program to spit out computer projections, basically. This is assuming full PPR. Baker Mayfield at a 14, which isn't great. I do think this is going to be more of a defensive matchup this week. Chubb at an 11. It's a start, but not a great start. Hunt, I think, gets some work out of the backfield, so I think he'll be okay. Odell Beckham, not a great projection, but I do think he'll get an opportunity, maybe one or two opportunities deep, and he basically has to capitalize on that. Jarvis Landry, working kind of middle of the field. I think he'll be nice, 15.24. I like his projection. Higgins, 4.23, not great. Harris, 8.58. I think Cleveland's going to want him higher if they want to win this game. Defense, special teams, I don't love it this week, 5.3. Now, I think they'll hold Pittsburgh to a low point value, but I don't see a lot of turnovers forced. I don't see a lot of sacks forced this particular week. Now, for Pittsburgh, once again, the RoccoBot projections here. Rudolph, not a great, not a start in my book, 16.04. James Conner, 15.39. That's a nice number for him. Jaylen Samuel, 6.37. Smith-Schuster, 9.02. Not great, but probably worth a start. Diontae Johnson, not great. Once again, I said my money's on James Washington. You can see why. My computers love him this week at 20.02. Vance McDonald, I think he needs to be involved more. I don't love this projection. I think if Vance McDonald is not involved in this offense in the passing game, I just have a feeling Pittsburgh's going to have a tough time moving the ball. But I do love their defense and special teams every single week. So that takes me through the game plan. Once again, we went through all the stats. We went through all the fantasy football and daily fantasy football projections. We'll be doing a few more of these this week. So if you're just a fan of football, check us out. Subscribe to our channel once again, and we'll have more of these. If you're a fan of the Browns, you're a fan of the Steelers, you think I'm missing something, please, comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think I'm missing. Let me know if you think that one of these two teams is going to be able to exploit a matchup that I did not identify. I would love to hear it. I would love your feedback. And I guess that wraps it up. So we'll catch you on another episode soon. Thanks, everyone.